Yes, housing demand in Boston keeps surging, so does the price and the number of people faced with homelessness. And one result in Boston is a 25% jump in family homelessness. To tell us about the problem and what's to be done is our guest, the Executive Director of FamilyAid Boston, Richard Ring. Thank you very much for being with us, Richard.
Thank you. My pleasure.
That's a big number, 25%. Explain what that comes from.
I think it comes from two general areas. I think it comes from the issue that many of us are aware of, the combination of the income disparity in the city of Boston, along with the really high cost of housing. The second thing that contributes to that high number is that the Commonwealth of Mass, in its emergency assistance shelter program, in its effort to reduce the number of homeless families in motels, created more shelter capacity within its system, and a number of those units were in Boston. The state has a very large system. It has about almost 5,000 homeless families, about 4,800 homeless families in it, 25% of whom live in motels, unfortunately. So they have been engaged to reduce that motel population and put families in shelters that offer much more in the way of services.
Now, what about the families themselves? Are they from Boston, or at least close to Boston, or is Boston sort of being the catch-all for people from pretty far off too?
I think that I think the state does its best to keep families as close to its home locale as they possibly can. And I think what was behind this recent change was that many Boston families were being placed in shelters out in Central Mass and even Western Mass at some point. So I do think it's an effort. I think what any of us involved in the field of homelessness have learned is that the closer families are to their relatives, to the community they're familiar with, to know how to use public transportation, can keep in the same schools for the children if possible, health care and so forth, that's critical to stabilizing people and ideally getting them back into their own independent lifestyle.
Now, what about the affordability problem? Boston has had this for a long time. Even during the economic downturn, rents were not really going down that much. So what's different now?
I think the demand, clearly more and more people have moved back into the city. Tremendous demand on housing. The rents throughout the city have been escalating. And what we find, the cheapest rents that we can find for our clients when we work with them is probably in the range of $1,400 to $1,500. And they're hard to come by, and that takes a lot of work on our part and our clients' part to find those apartments.
So it sounds like you're not just talking about Jamaica Plain or East Boston, or this could be Dorchester, Roxbury, or Mattapan.
Sure, I mean, we're not talking downtown, of course, but in the outlying neighborhoods, that's about the cheapest that we can find apartments. Another point, though, that I'd like to make about the homeless census is that it was a large number. I think it was about 1,500 homeless families that were cited in that study. But kind of obscured within that large number is a smaller but growing group of what I would call the working poor homeless families. These are people who are employed. They're employed at low-paying jobs, security guards, people working as medical assistants in the healthcare system, folks who work in social service organizations, childcare, daycare places that don't earn a whole lot of money. These are folks that are earning money, but they so often find themselves at risk of becoming homeless because of the high cost of rents, and their income is just about making it for them. And if they have something interrupt that income flow, they're either at risk of being homeless or they become homeless. And one of the programs that my organization, FamilyAid Boston, provides in partnership with the City of Boston is to address this problem of the working poor homeless families. Boston is the only municipality in the state that has a program for the working poor homeless families.
Now, those of us who don't know the problem as well as you do, we might think of the homeless as a type of people, but you see them closer up as maybe people in a, regular people in a very tough situation that might be temporary too.
Oh, for sure. Oh, without a doubt. As I say, these are people who, a technician at my pharmacy is a formerly homeless young woman who got engaged with service providers, received some assistance, received some supportive social services, and has regained her independence. She has an apartment, she's gainfully employed now, and so forth. So I mean, not only in a professional sense do we get to know these people, but quite frankly, in a personal sense, these are folks, they're working at jobs in a number of businesses, companies, and so forth that we deal with on a daily basis, but they're just at the real low end of the pay scale.
Well, to keep up on this growth in family homelessness, what do we need now that we haven't done before?
I think we've been doing it. In all honesty, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the City of Boston, I think, historically have been viewed as leaders in the nation in terms of addressing this problem of homelessness. And there's not a lack of concern, either at the State House with Governor Baker in the legislature or at City Hall with Mayor Walsh. I think, though, what government has to do is to continue doing what it's doing, but do more of it. And in particular, especially if I'm talking about at-risk homeless families, particularly help with prevention programs, flexible fund prevention programs that can help a homeless family that might be at risk of losing their apartment to stay put until they can regain their footing. And the other thing is, once again, the addition of more affordable housing. We are hoping and confident that the governor will sign into law a $91 million measure that will provide about 700 more Massachusetts rental vouchers, which are essential. There's subsidies, housing subsidies. They will directly get 700 families more out of this shelter system and back into their own permanent housing. I
know you have an anniversary approaching because you were originally a group that was founded 99 years ago, was it?
99 years ago. FamilyAid Boston is the latest iteration of what was the Travelers Aid Society of Boston, founded in 1916. Interestingly enough, there are a lot of similarities to the work we do now with back then. Back then, we had volunteers who would help impoverished immigrants at the docks in East Boston, the North End, at the rail terminals such as South Station. And these were people new to Boston, needed help with finding housing, with transportation, with employment and all. And that is precisely what Travelers Aid Society of Boston did 99 years ago. It's had a rich and proud history. World War I, World War II, the agency provided enormous support to military personnel trying to get around the country. But these years, the people we're focused on the most are homeless right within Boston.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being with us.
It was my pleasure.
From FamilyAid Boston, Richard Ring. We'll have more news in just a moment.